Hola, buenos días a todos. En un minutito empieza la sesión. Dentro vídeo. Hola, buenos días.
Good morning. You know that we are organizing this session in cooperation with our colleagues in Portugal. So I just want to give the floor to Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here with you. It's the first time we do something together. And in a bit, we will explain how the session is going to work. And we will start with the roundtables we organized for today.
Esta sessão vai ser em 3 idiomas, portanto, em 3 línguas, em português, em espanhol e em inglês. Convidamos a que escolham, portanto, na barra cá em baixo do Zoom, onde aparece interpretação, o canal de áudio que vos interessa, portanto, que preferirem. Nós vamos gravar esta sessão e vamos disponibilizar posteriormente nos sites, quer da Europa Criativa, a Oficina Europa Criativa Espanha, quer também em Portugal, e nas redes sociais. Estão a apoiar-nos tecnicamente e super tecnicamente os nossos colegas Isabel Pérez, o Manuel Garcia, Susana Costa Pereira.
Our colleagues here with us. We thank all of them. We are meeting. We are around 200 people. Most of them are Portuguese and Spanish. We also have people from other European countries and from faraway countries like Mexico. This is a very interesting group of participants. We thank them all, and we also thank the speakers for being here with us today in this session. Now we give the floor. We're going to try and be fast because the most important thing today is listening to our speakers. But this initiative is taking place within the framework of a series of events that are linked to how the different countries reacted to the pandemic we are suffering. There are other colleagues that already did this, and the Commission actually organized its own event. So we thought it was convenient because we are living something similar. So we thought that it was also a good idea. We organized this with Sarah. And that's why we decided to organize this event. We tried to have all the countries represented here. You will see that, well, the different sectors represented in the different roundtables. And we thought it was also convenient to focus on local or national cases, but that are also international in a way. They have an international side. And these also reacted to the pandemic. They are also focusing on resilience, this term that is so trendy right now. So just so you know that the program Creative Europe is already there. It's working on these things. The program is going to be launched very soon in the upcoming days. And just, well, a few comments. It was approved. We're very satisfied because the budget was increased. So that's very positive news. It's almost twice as much as the previous edition. And we think that the calls are going to take place in May. And as I was saying, we take advantage of this event today, how close it is to the pandemic. We probably are going to dedicate a third of that budget to these projects that are related to, well, the priorities that are going to define the upcoming period. And you know that the funds that are coming from the European Union are a very important topic right now. So we are going to dedicate these to these programs, to these initiatives, things like mobility, gender equality. So we encourage you to take notes about everything that our speakers are going to say, because they are the ones who are working very hard in these. And well, from there, we are here. You can ask any question. You can send us any inquiries you may have. We are more than glad to help you. I give the floor to Carolina Fenol. She's the one who has been coordinating the session, so she will explain you a little bit about the logistics. Yes, thank you. I'm also a technician in the Creative Europe headquarters in Spain. We're going to give you some directions and providing some context for each of the countries, how everything has been going on, what happened with COVID, and the perspectives or the plans for our future. I give the floor to Sara, who will start with the case of Portugal, and then I will also explain our case.
Muito obrigada, Augusto e Carolina. Como Augusto dizia, e é uma informação muito relevante.
Thank you very much, Augusto and Carolina. Around a third of the budget is going to be invested in the first 2 years. And this is a measure, this is a decision that is very, very convenient to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, especially in the culture sector. Actually, in fact, there is some research, and we know this because we've been working in the cultural industry, and we know that it's one of the sectors that has been really affected. But there is research telling us that that the crisis that the sector went through was a crisis that affected every area. Even if it's true that some areas were more affected than others, there are different studies and we see some differences in the percentages, but we see that performing arts is one of the areas that was more badly affected. After that, we see music and then visual arts, etc. But the only area in the culture industry that stayed safe and actually increased its revenue was video games. All the other ones were affected by the crisis. Portugal was not an exception to these. The sector was the first one to be absolutely locked, to collapse last year in March, and it's still going through a reactivation process. We are recuperating some of the activity in the sector, but it's still pretty shy, it's still pretty slow. In June, we will have a study published which shows the impact of the pandemic in Portugal. And we will see how there was, how the economy collapsed. And this led to a series of support measures, some of them in the short term, that were offered to mitigate the most urgent circumstances from the government, from the administration, and also from the private sector. We also started working in some legislation for artists, which we already were trying to work on before the pandemic. And this showed how weak, how fragile the professionals in this sector are. There was also some urgency to include an aspect about culture in our recovery plan for culture. We worked on this, but we are still trying to implement this plan. And for that, we need to go through the digital transition. We need to digitalize arts and heritage. And we need to dynamize the sector at a local level. We still need to get further details about these, and we need to know how it's going to be implemented in the upcoming years. Carolina, what happened? What is going on in Spain? Yes, well, just a quick overview to the context, to the situation in our companies in Spain. We have already some data about the impact of the pandemic in employment in the culture industry. There are some available statistics. You have the link here. You can get further information because they compiled a lot of data. But I would say that our industry, the culture industry in Spain, represents more than 3% of our GDP and offers more than 3% of the total employment in the country. About the size of the companies in Spain in this sector, I would highlight that generally they are small enterprises because 65% of the professionals in the sector are freelancers. And almost 30% of the companies have less than 6 employees. So this is something important that we need to consider about the impact and how the professionals in the sector are being affected. In 2019, right before the pandemic started, cultural employment in Spain was at a record level, but with the pandemic in 2020, it decreased 6%. We also need to take into account that these statistics are not including all the professionals in the cultural industry that were under temporary employment regulation measures. Cultural employment decreased in 2020, especially among male workers more than in female workers. And then on the next slide, we'll leave you here some information that you can expand. You have information about the measures that the ministry launched. There are 2 royal decrees, one in 2019 with a series of measures to support the sector. And this includes a cash flow line to facilitate access of those SMEs to the funding that the administration is offering. You see other measures here, and in the measures that were approved this year, there were also some extraordinary measures approved to support the sector and to support the professionals in the industry that could not access those other measures in the first royal decree approved. And I just want to mention some other things about our resilience plan that was approved. This is it's recently updated. It was launched at the beginning of this month. Its objective is to support training, especially in the cultural industry. It's going to be an investment of 825 million euros only for culture and sports. And I'm saying this because we need to bear in mind that our sector is going to benefit from other elements. For example, one that is offered for SMEs or maybe for the touristic industry or for digital aspects. So they can also access this other aids. And this is focused around three main challenges. We need to revalue the cultural industry, dynamize culture, and to boost cultural services. And as I said, get further information about this in the links that you see on the slide. So I don't want to take much more of your time. We will start with the first round table, which will be moderated by Sara. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carolina. Thank you for all that information about what's going on in Spain. Now I will give the floor to the person working on the field about these, implementing projects in this field that is so challenging right now. I want to thank the speakers of the first roundtable. We have Ludovico Miguelin, Daniel Broncano, Nuno Saraiva, and Tiago Guedes from Oporto and from the DDD Festival. I'll start with a Portuguese speaker and then I'll give the floor to a Spanish speaker. I'll start with you, Tiago. Probably the festival that just finished is still fresh in your mind since it just finished. It always was a very international festival covering different areas. And the last year's edition was cancelled and you resumed this year the activity. How did all this happen? How did all this adaptation took place? And what will you replicate in the future, in future editions, and what you wouldn't do again the same way? Thank you very much, Sara. Thank you for your invitation. I want to say hello to all my colleagues from Creative Europe and all the other speakers, and I want to welcome you all to this session. The DDD Festival was a great adventure, especially the 2021 edition. It's a very challenging project because, well, the years it had, well, dance is one of the main pillars of the festival. We work in different locations, in different municipalities, and we program our shows in different theaters around the city of Oporto. The edition that just finished was the 5th edition of the festival. Last year, we had to cancel the festival. We didn't have the time or the tools that we would have needed to imagine, to see how the festival could have taken place, maybe in an online version. Until the very last minute, we were there hesitating between canceling or not canceling, but we thought that the pandemic was going to end. So what we thought was better was to, in order not to make it more difficult for the artists, we thought that maybe we should replace the edition for the 2021 edition. So I think that this edition we have this year was the one we were supposed to have the previous year. It's an international event with artists from Portugal, but also from other countries. We also have a very important part of the festival, which is training. And the festival model that we had imagined was absolutely impossible to manage. with last year's circumstances. The lockdown started on January 16 this year, and we had months of experience in online events. So now we were sure about the program of the festival. We had some live shows prepared because theaters were open since September to up to January. But we had a digital monitoring system also for those events. So we could have 50% of the people attending the festival in the live events. So we had a know-how that we had um, compiled during the year. So we had an idea of how the DDD festival could take place. We had some live shows that would be premiered, but most of it was digital. What we wanted to do is we wanted to transform our website into a platform where people could browse through the web like if they were in the festival, with premieres, documentaries, lectures, all kinds of things. And we also had our digital teams that were ready. We had all the equipment, all the professionals that we needed for this digital event. So we had a multidisciplinary team. They were all working together to make it possible in a digital manner. And we are very happy, very satisfied with the results. The theaters opened on April 19, one day before we started with the festival. So we had lots of work. It was, well, it was going to be digital, but we opened one more line. We had one more analogic layer, which is live shows, live events that we had. We had 6 premieres, and they would be filmed and broadcasted. And also, they took place in the theater, and people, the audience, could attend the theater. But we also filmed it to include them in the digital platform. So we had like a hybrid version edition of the festival that just finished. It was a big adventure with many surprises, but it was a very positive experience. Thank you very much. Nuno? Also very recent, you organize a business conference, and it also had to be adapted. You had to move to the digital world. How did you do this? How did you make it possible? How could you promote those synergies between musicians? How could you adapt all these to these new circumstances?
Good morning to all of you. For those of you who are not familiar with our festival, its mission started in 2014. It's the first international conference of music in Portugal. There was nothing until 2014 when Mr. Torrilla and myself founded Westway Lab. And right from the beginning, the most conferences in Europe and around the world have 2 parts. There's showcasing new talents, and there's the professional side with the conferences. In our case, right from the beginning, Rui Torrilla wanted to make a difference, and he added uncommon music references in music compared to other subjects. And Westway, right from the beginning, had these 3 parts. Maybe
Cancelar não era para nós uma opção, não foi uma opção em 2020, e então adiámos de abril para outubro.
Due to a sense of mission, but this we didn't want to cancel it, so we postponed it to October 2020. And this way, we were going to be able to have this hybrid edition, well, within what was possible. Then in 2021, we went back to a regular schedule, April, but we maintained this hybrid edition. In 21, it was almost 100% digital. So regarding the mission of conferences, regarding show business and the festival that was broadcast and streaming, but we didn't have the artistic residence. This was not possible in 2020 or 2021. And all this learning made us have the experience of using platforms for our music. Both editions had positive and negative things. We haven't analyzed the conclusions to look into the future, but within hybrid, we expect that it's going to be more physical than digital. Okay, we'll go back to that in a while. Ludovica, I'm going to give you the floor so that you can speak about the project On the Fly, which is one of Hangar's projects, creation space with different phases, headquartered in Barcelona. On the Fly is devoted to the digital world. So do you think that this context is positive for the project? What do you think? So I'm going to present On the Fly. It's a European project. Thank you very much for the invitation to Europa Creativa. On the Fly is a project whose aim is strengthening the practice of live coding, which is a performing technique that allows you to create visuals and music through algorithm programming live. So it's based on digital things. The On the Fly project was written before the pandemic started, and we started to implement it once the pandemic had started. So as you said before, On the Fly has two priorities. First of all, digitization. So explaining or making people closer to open source, active programming, because this is a crossing between arts and computing science. And the second goal is gender balance. We're challenging the existing narrative of female participation in computing science and art. The project goals are strengthening the community of this project, live coding, people who use this performing technique, enlarge the audience, people that come to see the performance, but also learning this technique and starting to practice this, and then also research on programming and arts. How did we adapt to the current situation? I would say the key word was collaboration. We've had collaborations with Sonar Festival and Mutec Festival. So we worked on site, of course, with a reduced audience, but it was a strong collaboration with these festivals that have a wide audience, and their communication abilities are also strong. And so we've worked with Sonar Festival and with Mutec Festival in Spain, Argentina, and Japan, which was 2 weeks ago. We've also adapted events to hybrid events. One of our goals was having live coded meetings. How did we do it? We adapted the meeting format. Instead of having wider or bigger performances. There were shorter performances. It was easier to enjoy them in an online format. And then regarding research, we are researching how to favor a wider accessibility to these hybrid events, how to record it, how to turn live streaming into a more live thing. I don't want to take more of your time. I'd like to leave room for questions. And now there's going to be a video that's going to show this technique. So that you can see how it goes. Digital programming. So I leave it there. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ludovica. You said that this is part of the pandemic. Collaboration is very relevant. We'll go back to that. Thank you, Ludovica. And last but not least, I will give the floor to Daniel Broncano. He organizes a festival that's considered in one of the most beautiful villages of Spain. It's a very particular context, very specific. Festival was one thing, then in 2020 it was digital. Now in July 2021 it will be different. Daniel, could you please explain how your adventure is going through these different phases? How are you planning a COVID-free festival in 2021? Thank you very much, Sara. I would like to thank Europa Creativa. I loved your introduction. I just need to add that this is 2021. In 2022, I'm sure it will be a completely different thing. COVID-free, well, you cannot ensure that something is COVID-free in this world. From the cultural industry, we can work to create the best possible conditions. I'm going to show some images so that you can see how Música en Segura works. This was in 2019. We started in 2014 with a festival of musical delicatessen in Segura, a very beautiful village in Spain. It's a village with 150 inhabitants in rural Spain. And our aim was to foster social integration platforms through music and generating rural development through the attraction of many visitors from Spain and around the world. Our music is based on the place where we are. We play with the natural environment. So in 2020, we had to completely transform ourselves because the village was closed, both in spring and autumn. Let's see if I can shift the image. Just hold on a second. In 2020, we broadcast concerts from the musicians' home. So we sent a technician to be able to have these shows, these concerts from home. They were live. We sent a cameraman, a recording technician, to a pianist house in Seville and in Berlin to broadcast it to our audience. And people paid a ticket to see this. It was a way to support the musicians and the festival. It was broadcast through YouTube Live. And then in autumn 2020, we had a concert for 150 inhabitants of our village. It was a maximum of 30 people per concert. This is a concert by Quiroga in the Jesuit Church. It was broadcast live in November 2020. In 2021, we will combine people on site and also an online presence. The main adaptation is playing with open spaces, having a festival that people like, but the virus doesn't like. This means using open spaces, reduced audiences according to regulations, and being able to broadcast this. We have iconic images such as this concert in an old factory in Orcera. This is very representative of our festival. We want to colonize the online environment from our small village in the south of Spain. What will happen in 2022? Well, I think we'll still have this new online presence. It's a new layer for our festival. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll be happy to answer questions if there are. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I would have 1,000 questions to ask you, but I just want to ask one general question for all of you. It's very simple. What's left for the future? After your experience, I would like you to give us a tip, something that you would continue to do and something you would not continue to do. So our recommendation is something you would not recommend. And all of this considering your projects and the fact that some of these projects are international. So Tiago, we'll start with you. Thank you, Sarah. It's a complicated question, but I'll try to answer quickly. It was scary at the beginning. What could we use and what things should not be presented? We cannot present objects that are not designed for the digital world. At the beginning, we had open plans, etc. This is a reduced experience for the audience. Digital things cannot be an imitation of a live show. It has to be specifically designed. I think that Creative Europe is going to focus on these. Projects should be thought of or designed for a hybrid format or digital format or live format. The secret for all of this is thinking about the digital format as a different thing, not as a replacement. I think this is very important. So in other words, not considering digital format as a threat, but as an ally. Yes, it's a way to reach a different audience and of being a third venue. It's a place we need to create just for the digital format. We need to add other venues where we can perform. Thank you very much, Tiago. Nuno, I'll give you the floor. This is a very complicated question. There's something the pandemic has given us, which is accelerating some processes that were already in motion. We had previously thought about having a digital database of the participants, a digital platform to foster online meeting, but it hadn't been implemented. Therefore, this type of mechanisms, well, it was urgent to develop all of this. Also, about what we shouldn't do. I don't know. We haven't had a complex analysis to give you an answer. But Nuno, you were saying in an interview that artists should not stream for free, should not do live streaming for free. You've talked about about monetizing online events. So looking into the future, it's better to think about enabling artists and how they can make profits with the digital format. I agree with Tiago. A show designed for a digital format should be consumed in a different way. it is necessary to pay for a ticket. It cannot be a live streaming for free. This is my view, of course.
Estamos com uma preferência.
Tem que ser uma coisa realmente consumidormente.
Are we having interferences? We're having interferences, I think. There were some good examples.
Grandes conclusões. Portanto, houve artistas que se adaptaram uns melhor que outros.
But we haven't reached a conclusion. There were artists that adapted better than others to a digital show. One of the best presentations in Westway 2020 was by a Polish artist that perfectly adapted the notion of images to be shown in Guimarães. This was very different. This is a positive example that we keep. It's not about aiming a camera at the artist, because this is going to make people tired. People who are online, they disconnect quickly. And this is another problem that we will need to address. Yes, digital technology, digital photography. Ludovica, considering that your project is digital, what can you tell us? Best practices or recommendations of things to do or not to do? Well, first of all, I think what Diego has said is very interesting. The digital format should be adapted. It cannot be a copy of an offline format. This is something we are doing research on, how to adapt platforms so that they are more accessible, more interesting regarding their content. I would say there's something that we need to continue to do, which has nothing to do with the digital format. It's about collaborating and joining forces among cultural institutions. This is something we've done this past year, joining forces, sharing best practices among organizations that work in the same industry, as we've done with festivals of music and performing arts based in Barcelona. Something that shouldn't do, copying reality into a digital format. But I think it's important to continue to offer hybrid formats. Let's not forget that if the digital format is not a copy of reality, it also offers a wider geographical accessibility. So people that maybe are unable to access locally to the content, they can access the content, they can be enabled, or they can train or enjoy a performance. That's what I would say.
Muito obrigada, Ludovica. A questão da acessibilidade é absolutamente determinante num festival no meio de um pueblo, não é? Portanto, 150 pessoas. Daniel, como é que está a ser, portanto, que nesta...
Thank you very much, Ludovica.
Portanto, vi o vosso site, há imensos cuidados e todo...
I saw your website. I see that you're very careful. You have a series of strategies. And I would like to know what you recommend for what would be your advice for these hybrid events? Yes, something that we already mentioned, which is monetizing, capitalizing streaming sessions, for example. I think that is very important. We need the public, the audience, to value what they are getting. So we need to design spaces for sponsors. When we've offered a free space or a free event, it's because we had a sponsor. It's true that streaming offers us new possibilities for some events, and so it's possible to be careful to design these things carefully so the audience values what they are getting. And Sarah, you were asking why or what are the aspects that are changing between face-to-face and digital. We had something that we offered in the festival. We had in shared spaces and homes. It's something we offered, and I don't think that's going to be back, not even after this, because there's a general change in the awareness about the protocols that we have to use, uh, employment safety, and these are things that are a little bit outside of the digital field itself. But I think that with this global perspective, it's true that there are restrictions that have come to stay, and we have to see what we were working in the cultural industry.
Sim, sem dúvida. Esta adaptação continua a existir e vai continuar.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. That adaptation is taking place, and we will need to keep on doing that. And in my opinion, what we're doing today is very positive because we are sharing what each of us is trying to do. And I want to thank you all for your contribution. We will continue with the next roundtable with the next panelists, but thank you all, Ludovica, Tiago, Nuno, Daniel. Thank you for being here and for sharing your experience.
Desde logo.
I don't know if maybe anyone has a question for you. Participants agree with the importance of accessibility and they also agree with the need to adapt the digital formats. We don't need to just copy the previous formats in a digital model. They also agree that sponsorship is important. We need to create new partnerships, new sponsorships, co-funding solutions. But I think that we don't have any questions. Yes, Sarah, excuse me, if you allow me, in the Q&A section, we have a question for the panelists. If you agree, maybe I can read it out loud. In all artistic projects that were mentioned, I would like to know whether you found any barriers or advantages related to copyright, intellectual property, when it comes to transferring that knowledge or those contents to the digital world. Yes, whoever wants to answer. Daniel offered, I think. Yes, well, just to comment a little bit about this question. In our case, we include in our agreements with the artists, in the contracts we sign, we tell them that we have the right to broadcast some of the shows. And in the case of YouTube, well, for example, when we are only streaming the live event and we are not capitalizing the show, we never had any problems. Of course, there are being some changes taking place in the regulation because until now we didn't have anything that we could observe. But I mean, generally in Spain, we don't rely too much on these, and we have that lack of trust in the digital world, in the online things. But I think that's changing. Ludovica, do you want to say anything else? Yes, in our case, it's similar to what Daniel was saying, but there's something different. The On the Fly project is an open source and open knowledge project. So actually, we are working on opening everything. Now it's an open source project. Actually, the artists themselves are showing their own code, their own work on the spot. It's a very generous project in that sense because they are showing you what's going on behind the scenes, no? So it's a way to see the performance, the reality of the artist on the spot. Now I would like to ask another question. What strategies were thought for the audience to pay for digital contents? And I would add, with so much offer, maybe it's a little complex. It gets a little complex. I know that in the DDD festival, the audience had access to the contents paying, but what was the strategy behind all this? In the case of Westway Lab, paid access was access for professionals. Professional registration had to be paid for, and the concerts were free. Free in these editions, usually either concerts, for example, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then we had concerts on Fridays and Saturdays that you had to pay for. When we adapted to digital, we made everything free. We adapted licenses from the artists to be able to provide these. And up to the date, that's the way we've been doing things. And yes, Tiago, in your case, how did you do? How did you do this? Well, yes, it was essentially the audience had to pay. It's true that it was a different value. It was €3, the ticket, but we did have some activities that were free. And we also had some program contents that helped us feel like a community. There are people that may be listening at the same time. So we know there's a group of people that is people that are watching the show. So we had 3 free access points that were took place at a specific time to create a community, a sort of community within the festival. And as for the shows, we tried not to differentiate too much in between the artists, between the digital and the live events. But for example, the events, the shows, instead of having 2 different activities, we would have them 48 hours online, so we could have that economic aspect preserved. We're going to have to finish this roundtable because we are a little bit over the time limit. But if you have any other questions, we can answer you privately. Now I give the floor to the other panelists for the second roundtable. Carolina? Thank you, Sara. Yes, we start with the second roundtable, which is focused about cultural heritage and the book sector. I want to thank our 4 speakers, Catarina Valenza, Cristina Diaz, João Paulo Proença, and Irene Anton. All of you are beneficiaries of Creative Europe projects. You all had a project that was being implemented, that was being carried out when the pandemic started. We wanted to ask you, what were those projects like? What was the initial idea of those projects and how you were able to adapt to the pandemic consequences, whether it was transforming the activities. I'm not saying substituting because as we saw, it's a different thing. So adapting to the digital environment. In the case of Catarina, with your project, Caritas, how was it? I don't know if you can tell us how it was, what the project is, and how you adapted it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your invitation to be here. Thank you to all the audience attending this event. The project, Caritas, works in 4 countries, France, Austria, Spain, and Portugal, and it tries to bring cultural heritage to people, eliminating accessibility barriers, whether it's physical or sense-related barriers. It's a project that it's addressed to young people. It's an initiative that comes from the constitution of the first fair network in Europe. We have more countries now included in the project, next to the 4 funders. It started in November in 2018. Then we applied for the call, and I think now we're able to compile a series of good practices, and we probably will keep learning from all these. But the final goal is to, through the platform, through the Heritas platform, to be able to study all these cases to increase accessibility, especially for young people, to cultural heritage. The project was already designed to include a digital output. We had prepared some workshops to disseminate contents. They took place digitally. And the big change, well, we had 2 big changes. The fairs that were part of the project had to be on a digital platform, except from the fair in Portugal, which will take place in 2021 in Portugal. And that one will be already an on-site fair, which will be the final event of this project, of this European project. That was one of the changes. The other important change was something difficult that came up, the contact with our stakeholders. It was very difficult to get in touch, if in a normal context there are difficulties, well, here it was even more difficult in this sense. And we link this difficulty to the pandemic, of course. This is a project, and those were the limitations we found. Thank you, Catarina. We will continue analyzing everything with further detail. I wanted to ask the same question to João Paulo. Within the Read On project, in the book sector, also focused on young people. Could you please tell us what the project was and how you could adapt it on the spot to this new situation we're living? Good morning. Thank you for your invitation. Thank you to Sarah and Creative Europe. I wasn't coordinating the project at a European level. It's a project with 6 countries, and I only coordinated at a national level. I am not just a teacher, but I would introduce myself as a teacher. The project, the Read On project, is a reading for enjoyment of the young people, and it aims at promoting reading among the young people, 11, 12 years old. We want to encourage them to read. It's a cooperation project with different countries: Portugal, Spain, Italy, UK, Ireland, and also in Northern Europe we have 2 partners in Norway. These are literature festivals that we organize to promote literature. 2 of them are schools, and in Portugal, especially in Portugal, the reading project is something very important in Europe. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the subject to this kind of programs, and especially in this age frame, 11, 12 years old, it seems like they stop being interested in reading, writing, in art. We have different activities. We have on-site activities and digital activities as well. So we adapted to the new situation. I don't know if you can go back to the previous slide. So the idea is for these young people to read at least 10 minutes a day, between 10 and 20 minutes a day, creative writing, also encouraging them to write about their life in a creative way. I think that this activity was born in Italy. It started in Italy, and it consists on introducing authors, or in Portugal, for example, we have writers from all the countries. In Spain, we have authors from Latin America, all this amazing and rich culture that we have, that we share with other culture, with other countries, where they speak the same language as we do. Then we have my live stream with cartoons, so they can design their own stories. And then we have a podcast and broadcast and video cast, which are very interesting activities for kids, for children. It's my teacher side, sorry. And obviously the project was devised for being an on-site event with different venues, with bookstores, authors introducing, presenting their books, young people who could visit other countries, maybe mobility for teachers, for artists, many things. But many other things we had to adapt. With the organization, this is a good product. We have this guide. We had a Portuguese version, a Spanish version as well. We also have an English version and another version for the Czech Republic. We got some financial aids in the Czech Republic to translate the guide. We also have the Italian version, and basically we show the good practices that we could compile. In spite of the pandemic, we were able to get this outcome as a product that can be shared. And I encourage you to participate with us. We had to cancel some events. The schools were closed. I refer to schools because in other countries, writers attend schools to maybe give lectures or training sessions that we were planning on having on site. So it's essential to adapt. We can also do it online. We can, but it's not the same. Also festivals, for example. We had to change the location for some of the festivals. We didn't know very well how to do it. And working this way, we had to reach a digital skilled audience. That was a limitation. There are other audiences with no access to the internet or to cell phones or to these cultural contents. In Portugal, Norway, it worked very well, in Italy as well, but there are other countries where it's more difficult. That's what I wanted to share. Little by little, we were able to have some of the activities, but many other things that were working very well implied that the participants had to move around. There were mobility issues. So, but some things, yes, they were working very well. A writer, for example, last week, she was with us, and we had to talk to her, and the writer would have a dialogue with the audience, but now it's different. And especially now, I would like to know if, we were able to organize some festivals, and we had one in Italy last year, but then we had to stop for some time with the pandemic. In Spain also in March. It was right in the middle of the pandemic, the lockdown. So, but we're still trying. We're doing our best to keep everything going on, just with different timing. In Portugal, we're going to schools, for example, or another activity that was very successful. I don't know, Sarah, if I'm talking very fast, just let me know. We have this guide, and we were asking for young people at schools that together with writers, we wanted them to prepare a text. This is the one last year. We are about to publish the one this year. It's just little stories, short stories, where young people from different countries, they write together with a writer, with a professional writer. We have different writers. Ana Pessoa, for example, who is in Belgium, but she worked with us just the same. And we have writers from other countries. I think that I'm over the time limit. Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you for your contribution, you all. We'll get back to you, okay? It's not that easy. It's not easy to just transform contents to digital because, well, maybe it's not as accessible as we would like.
La palabra ahora a Cristina Díaz.
Now, I'd like to give the floor to Cristina Díaz so that she speaks us about the project Digital Treasures, led by State Archives, a body within this ministry. Could you please tell us what this project consists of and the main aspects you had to adapt on the go? Thank you, Carolina. Good morning to all of you. Yes, I come from the archive sector, more particularly historic or national archives in the state's archives. This project, called European Digital Treasures, aims at highlighting the value of European archives as guarantors of primary sources to rebuild our history and our culture as Europeans, and also as essential values of our identity. It binds us within Europe. Everything is in the documents in these archives that we've been storing since the Middle Ages. There are 5 national archives involved in this project: Spain as coordinator, but also Hungary, Malta, Norway, and Portugal. There's an archive research institution in Austria and the Ulster Technology University in Ireland to give the technology component this project needed. Well, this is a general introduction. I would like to say that the project tackles the big challenges big archives have in Europe, which are summarized in 3. The first one is generating a bigger added value, even profitability, considering that virtually 100% of the funding for these archives comes from general state budgets, and all the services we provide to our citizens are based on public service and therefore they're for free. With this project, we would like to study the possibilities we have to identify new business models or new lines, for example, to sell services from our area. The second part of the scope is reaching a wider audience, more users. And also in this project, we're thinking about new strategies and activities to attract new audiences. The project is focusing on teenagers through secondary education centers, and also an older audience with a cultural interest that need this type of cultural entertainment that our books can provide. And the third part of the scope is fostering the visibility of the European heritage, in this case, European archive heritage, through the documents we keep that are key to understand Europe's history, but also the world's history. We want these documents to be known, and therefore we would like to organize some exhibitions, and then I'll explain the impact of COVID in them, and also promoting international mobility, not just for the artworks, but also for professionals. What about the adaptation? Which were the main changes? In our case, we were quite lucky because in February 2020, we were able to organize an artistic residence scheduled within our project. And we are preparing transmedia exhibitions that on the 29th of June will start the first one. So due to the project dynamic, we didn't have a significant impact that made us stop. We were in a preparation stage. However, all the activities related to new audiences, as I've said, this was one of the main goals of our projects, particularly activities for crowdsourcing, youth camps, co-creation activities. All of these activities were postponed, and we hope to be able to relaunch them in the second half of the year. Regarding the exhibitions, which is one of the strongest activities within the project, we'll premiere the first one in Barcelona on the 29th of June, the archive of the Crown of Aragon, and we had to adapt this exhibition to COVID measures because we have to bear in mind this is a transmedia exhibition. The use of screens, tactile screens, touch screens was very present in this exhibition. Then there are other events that were supposed to be on site. They have been either postponed or changed to online events. I'll give you an example of one of these events that we've been able to redesign to do it 100% online. Okay, we'll go back to you so that you can explain this activity, which looks very interesting, very innovating, and more particularly coming from state archives. Thank you. So now we'll ask Irene Anton from Rata Nature publishing company. She's been a beneficiary of this program in Creative Europe projects for a literary translation. So could you please give us one or two ideas that explain this project that you had ongoing when the pandemic started? And in your particular case, I would like to ask you, because we know that a few months into the pandemic, you decided to stop because of the situation, to really rethink everything, your own activity, even your business model, to reorient yourselves towards a cross-cutting attitude which will be more sustainable. So we are really interested in you explaining this experience. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank all of the attendees and the participants. Rata Nature is an independent publishing company that was created in 2008. It was born as a very small company. Now it's a medium-sized company. There are 6 people working in the team, and there are many collaborators that are freelance. When the pandemic started, we were in the middle of a program related to translation support. They're every 2 years. Ours started in January 2019. It was supposed to finish in January 2021. So when the pandemic started, we had to publish 7 books. In our company, we've always been really aware, but now even more with the current situation, about establishing a closer relationship to nature, being more respectful with our environment. We've always been interested in art or literature production by women. We wanted not to give a voice to it because I already have a voice, but we wanted to make it known. Our program was focused in some books, focusing on women in the rural world. Women in the rural world are even more silenced, not just because they're women, but because the rural world, as we say in Spain, empty Spain. People don't focus on what's going on beyond the main cities. And we wanted to recover books from 6 different countries: Norway, Finland, 2 Italian authors, an Irish one, a French one, and a German one. As I was saying, the pandemic arrived. We had published 5 of these 7 books. So we just had activities linked to the last one that was published just before the onset of the pandemic and the publication of the 2 last books in our program. But as you were saying, of course, we focused on this. We created a YouTube channel. We invited translators because the presence of translators is very important for our program. We invited them to speak about the books and the relationship between the reader and the translator. We wanted the readers to see the translators' faces. We wanted them to talk. We recorded videos to establish a connection that usually takes place in books presentations, in libraries, or reading books. So this way it was going to be more open. We improved and updated our website. We took advantage of the pandemic while we were in lockdown to do many things. But our view was, this is a call for attention. We've always been interested in establishing a new relationship with nature. This pandemic has a clear origin, which is the predatory nature of savage capitalism that does not respect ecosystems or individual life. Sonos has created all of this. So we want that our small company would change completely and stop participating as much as possible, because very often this is inertia. The market works in a way that you are rushing all the time. We were in lockdown for some months. This was mandatory from the 15th of March to the 20th of June. We spent 4 more months. We didn't publish until mid-October 2020. In all this time, we carried out a deep analysis and a deep transformation of the way we worked. So the first reflection, the first analysis was when something like this happens, and unfortunately, due to how the world works, we think there will be more to come. Let's hope it will not be like this, but we don't know what's going to happen. Fires, hurricanes, temperature, high temperature records, nature catastrophes that cause violence in humanity. they cause wars, etc. So when these catastrophes happen, you realize that public services that are well managed could save us, and also the feeling of community and labor and social conditions that make suffering as low as possible. A possibility to take care of vulnerable people, people who need it at that point, sick people. So we wanted to own our working time. So instead of working 5 days a week, it's 4 days a week. There's a possibility to combine professional and personal life. If someone in the team has a particular need, they can say it and they can stay home. The way we work, we've reduced our programs. We publish less books a year so we can work in a different way. We haven't changed salaries. So from an objective point of view, we have a better life. Our books have changed a lot. We've changed the paper. In all this time when we were in lockdown, hibernating, so to speak, we did some research about the best papers. This is a key part of book production. And we saw something that Greenpeace has said for a while, that this little seals, FCC, etc., did not entail the due respect to the environment that they should have. So we looked for a paper company that was really adapted. It was the best one. We have removed plastic from all of our DVDs, envelopes, bags, etc. Books are not covered in plastic. We've changed mobility. We go to work on foot or by bike. All the energy we consume comes from cooperative companies. We've changed our bank. So we've done many things to change our position in the world. And this is shown also by publishing some books that offer diagnosis on what's going on. So thank you for that attitude. We're sharing your information so that people who want can have more information. It's very well explained there. We're really behind schedule. So I'd like to move on to the next question. For the other three speakers, they come from European cooperation projects. Could you please give me an example to show how you think that European cooperation could strengthen the organization's resilience and also to look for innovative solutions? I think Cristina has a very clear example. I don't know if we can show the video to explain how they were able to take that leap from an offline event to an online event. Yes, I wanted to say that thanks to this project, the European cooperation, we've been able to share solutions related to digital innovation. Perhaps a single institution would have not been able to do this. What you're seeing on your screen is a virtual reality event held in April this year. It was an inter-industry event, video games and archives. It was created in a platform called ArtSpace that allows you to interact, but not in the way we're used to do, which is Zoom, like we're doing now. It allows you to meet people in a specifically designed space with an avatar, which is what you're seeing. Each of these people represents an individual present in the event. There were 21 professionals from European archives and 6 great international experts from the video game industry, developers, creators, producers for Assassin's Creed, Tomb Raider, and other main video games. And in this event that you've seen, I think the images speak for themselves. what we did was sharing experiences between the two industries. It was a very fruitful event because we saw there was a possibility to do lots of things together within the environment of serious games and games focused on the cultural industry. And the first presentation by Sarah, there's something that caught my attention. It is that the video game is the only industry that has flourished during the pandemic. So within our possibilities to attract a younger audience, as I said at the beginning, we want youngsters to start playing with content that that offers them knowledge about European history. I would say that because you had those strategic partners in technology, that made it possible for you to adapt quickly to change your mindset. Yes, we did it thanks to Game Lab, which is like the big video game fair. It is held once a year in Barcelona. And this partner, the project, provided us with the technology that all the partners were able to benefit from. I think that they even trained you, they gave you a previous training in technology so that you were able to take part in this. I think it's a clear example of synergy and European cooperation. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask the same question to Katarina. Based on the experience in this European project, could you please give us an example on how it was helpful for you to work in European cooperation, for example, sharing resources or saving in resources or looking for innovative tools thanks to this European cooperation?
Yes, yes, it has. It makes perfect sense to work collaborating with others. It's an essential condition. It's not just within the European Union, but at a global level. During this year and a half, it was very important also for our state of mind. We need to be surrounded by partners and being aware of what was going on in other countries, because the other four partners in the country are organizing fairs and different cultural heritage events in their countries. So that made it possible for us to understand public policies, also the impact of the pandemic, and how it is going to create a new way, a new behavior in us. So we had to devise the new opportunities that the pandemic brought, like the digital platform, different things that can coexist permanently. And it's true that we still haven't held this discussion, but I admit that I am a little skeptical about it, about the change that we may see in people when it comes to digital aspects. I think that very soon we will go back to the past, to how things were in the past, and we will reinforce actually face-to-face relations. I think, well, maybe there will be some changes, but I don't think that people will lock down themselves at home and refuse to have contact with other people. I usually say that we will see a new crisis in the healthcare systems in the different countries, not due to the pandemic, but due to our mental health, actually. And I think that the real challenge that we are facing now, due to the pandemic in the cultural industry and in relation to the digital field, is how we coexist with others. And this, maybe I'm being a little bit conservative, but this gaming dimension is essential for the youngest audiences. I don't know if there are some concepts about this. I think that there's a lot of work to do. And I don't think that we will substitute all the physical and on-site events for digital versions of them. I think that there are some things that may not work in a digital version. So we will have different initiatives, different proposals. Those new proposals are interesting, but they don't always work. I think we needs to be something to complement some. They need to be supplementary. They cannot substitute what we had before. We cannot substitute the physical dimension. I think the digital dimension is an opportunity to be close to the audience in a more systematic way, but then we need to be able to take that farther to an on-site meeting with the audience. Yes, thank you, Katarina. Thank you for your comments, for your contribution. We could stay here thinking about all these for the whole day. But just to add something to what you said, how everyone in the culture sector and audiences and everyone was affected in our mental health, like you were saying. I think that we're going to see the consequences of all that for a long time. And just to finish, João Paulo, I would like to also ask you this question. If you can give us some details about your experience, about your cooperation with other European partners, how you were able to reinforce to maybe improve, not just keeping the project alive, but actually improve your activity and survive after all this crisis and these changes. Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to say something that may sound obvious, but I have to say it. I have a lot of experience in European projects, and this has been a huge challenge. Some things may sound obvious, but they are not. First of all, we need to keep a dialogue going on among the different partners. Sometimes they just get together a couple of times a year. They have a coffee, they share a beer, and we make friends in that kind of interaction. But right now, it's essential to have meetings with our partners. Now we meet once a month online, and we really keep rethinking the activities. Some of them they need to be revised, and it's very important. It's important to be motivated, and this is probably the most important thing. This is going to finish. We won't be able to continue with the project. No, we cannot just stop. We have to keep going and we have to stay motivated. This is essential. We need to keep the cohesion in the team. We have our partners in Norway, Italy. We need to keep that dialogue going on, and we need to optimize our contact network. It's a way to have a better communication because we have to really express our ideas. We can share our good practices, our successful case studies. We can tell each other, well, this activity went this way. We've done many different things that were successful. I have this with me also. Can read, and it's a box with a lot of good practices. But well, the mail services weren't working very well. But those are little victories that we can share with the partners. Also, the possibility to share as much as we can online. We need to be able to change. And I'm going to give you two examples. Last week in Portugal, we had a festival. All of it was online, digital. It was 4 days. We had 2,000 participants instead of 5,000 that we usually had if we had this as an on-site event. This wasn't included in the project. We had to change it. No, sorry, we had 10,000 online participants from many different countries. And we had the participation of partners of the project that could be present in our country without having to spend money. So it was a very successful initiative, but we lose that those other talks and that take place on the side. But it's true that it gives us access to culture without leaving our home. They talked about it in the press in Portugal, and it was important. It was a way to for motivating to motivate reading, to promote reading. We have a lot of schools in the country which are applying that 10-minute reading a day that I said before. So it's very important to share all these good practices among the partners. I don't know if I answered your question, Carolina. Yes, thank you very much. European cooperation allows you to share those good practices, but not only that, they can be spread and the project gets more sustainable thanks to all these. We have to close, we have to finish with the roundtable because we're a little bit over the time that we had available. I think there are no questions, but well, in any case, if you have any question and you want to address it to any of the speakers, you can send it by mail and we will answer you, or any further information that you may need. I give the floor to Sara and Augusto in case they want to make some conclusions. Yes, I give you the floor in just a few seconds, Sara. But I wouldn't need to add anything else. We had this general overview. I want to thank all the speakers. On my side, and also Sara and Carolina, I think that this is a very important initiative for both countries. We can see some common things and some things that are different. So that's the most important content. I want to insist on thanking the speakers. It was very diverse. We see how all these projects were adapted to the digital and how some others were, well, they just had to do it. They saw how the digital version is not only a strategy and a tool, but it's something that came here to stay, and it's going to be a part of cultural projects. I was also interested in how you talked about, well, digitalization, but also other kinds of adaptation. We encourage you to take part in our next events because it's what we have nowadays. I just want to thank you. I insist my most sincere thanks to the speakers, and I just want to remind you that we have a survey that we will send you after the event. Please be sure to fill that in and send it to us because it's really useful for us for improving in future sessions. Thanks to all the speakers, the interpreters, the technicians, and all those of you behind the scenes who make this possible. Sara, I give you the floor. Thank you very much, Augusto. Thank you to all of you again. We will have the recorded version on our website. If you want to go over anything, you can do that. On our side, we're here for anything you may need. We're here to support the Creative Europe program. And, that's not our role. That's what we do, so we can clarify anything, we can help you or give you support with your applications. So please be sure to do it. It was an honor and a pleasure to be here today. Thank you to all of you for your generosity and for sharing your projects with us. Very soon we will have new calls coming and new events launched, and many of the topics we dealt with today will be included in those calls. Thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you. See you soon.